Good morning. I'm Elliot McIntire, your worship associate this morning. A statement in an essay I was reading recently caught my eye. Why don't we have the same curiosity about the town where we live as we did about the town where we spent a few days? Why don't we? The town we are visiting is all new to us. Everything is new. But the town we live in, we have seen the same scene many times. There's no novelty to it. I once calculated I had taken the same route from the supermarket to our house at least 11,000 times from the time that we lived in that house. Nothing to remark upon there. But even a small change can catch our attention. And if we let it help us see things anew, these small gifts are precious, and I treasure them when I can. These days I do virtually all my banking online, with my phone or my laptop, but occasionally it's necessary to actually go into the bank building. For reasons that are not at all relevant to this story, our bank branch is located almost to I-5 at the far end of Lake Oswego from where we live in Oak Grove. The other day I found it necessary to go to the bank. I drove up to Selwood, crossed the bridge, went up the hill, and took Boone's Ferry Road to the bank. I spent about 2 minutes there, then came back the same way. As I drove, I marveled at what a beautiful place I've chosen to live in. Yeah, there was the occasional light industry, houses, apartment complexes, and shops. But for the most part, nearly the entire way, I was looking at vistas of beautiful trees, Oregon oaks, Douglas fir, big leaf maple, clusters of fern along the sideway. I got views of the Willamette going and coming and a couple of nice streams in between. The other night I was awakened by a flash of lightning followed by a huge clap of thunder, making me think of times where I lived where thunderstorms were more common than they are around here. I kind of miss them now, and that was a nice reminder. If I allow myself to accept gifts like these, it enriches my life. One recent evening, my wife and I were sitting quietly watching TV when she said, "Hear that? Crickets." It's been a long time since I've heard crickets. I heard them often when I was a boy, but it's been many years since I was aware of hearing crickets. What's the difference? Last week I got hearing aids. Hasn't changed my world, but many of those little sounds that I had lost are now back in my world, and I'm enjoying every one of them. Hope to keep those new old sounds fresh in my mind. I'm a fairly regular attendee at our church's men's group, and the friendships I've formed there are important to me. As a bonus, I get little unexpected gifts of knowledge from our conversations. I now know much more about Roman history, how the left and right brain works, tricks for growing plants, and contemporary welding technology than I ever expected. None of them are nominal topic for the evening. Again, what a gift. And I'm delighted by the politeness of Oregon drivers. After living and driving in Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., and points in between, I watch as cars slow and stop for pedestrians at a crosswalk, and the pedestrians are confident that the cars are going to slow and stop for them. When a lane ends, drivers smoothly merge, zipper style. None of these are life-changing events, but they and things like them happen all the time. When I think about my life, I'm grateful, for the big things. Having found the right wife, falling into a job that I loved, having 2 wonderful sons and 3 terrific grandchildren. But it's those little gifts that happen every day that make my life a joy.
Our reading today is a poem from the book Susceptible to Light by Chelan Harkin. The worst thing we ever did was put God in the sky, out of reach, pulling divinity from the leaf, sifting out the holy from our bones. Insisting God isn't bursting dazzlement through everything we've made, a hard commitment to see as ordinary. Stripping the sacred from everywhere to put a cloud man elsewhere, prying closeness from your heart. The worst thing we ever did was take the dance and the song out of prayer, made it sit up straight and cross its legs, removed its rejoicing, wiped clean its hip sway, its questions, its ecstatic yowl, its tears. The worst thing we ever did is pretend God isn't the easiest thing in the universe, available to every soul in every breath. When I was a little girl in the 1970s, I had a little wooden plaque in my bedroom with like acrylic toll painting on it with that hymn. One of the strangest things I got out of pandemic was a new favorite season. I've always been an autumn person myself. I like the cooler weather in the mornings, the absolutely luminous nature of the light, and crisp, dazzling leaves. But when the pandemic struck, and I, as an extrovert who loves my house very much as long as I get to leave it at least once a day, needed to walk out in the world, I was reacquainted with the beauty of spring. Now, I am also a person who deeply loves the beauty of the natural world. If you've been here a while, you will be nodding and saying, yep, that's on point. I have 43,000 photographs on my phone, most of them beautiful things that I have seen, ocean, flowers, trees, rivers. And so noticing flowers wasn't anything new. But when one is distinctly isolated and unable to visit people or travel or go to places where people gather, flowers took on a whole new meaning for me. The daffodils arrive first, cheery, bright yellow, followed closely by the tulips in many, many colors, hyacinths. Then you move into the azaleas and the rhododendrons, roses which last all summer long, peonies, iris, and eventually dahlias and zinnias. I could walk in my neighborhood and see something beautiful every single day, and boy, did I need that. Chelan Harkin, in our reading, speaks of pulling the divinity from the leaf. But what does that even mean? In this poem, they are talking about how the worst thing we ever did was putting God in the sky out of reach, pulling the divinity from the leaf. And I would say that Harkin is saying that our ancestors' efforts to make one God removed from the natural world with control over everything has had the probably accidental effect of reducing our rejoicing in the small things in nature. And I believe that that is a tremendous loss. Faiths like Hinduism and sometimes Buddhism are considered pantheistic. God is everywhere and in everything, as opposed to monotheism like Christianity or Judaism or Islam, which teaches that there is only one God. But pantheism teaches that everything is full of divinity. Most of us aren't going to start worshiping many different gods like in Hinduism. Lots of folks have joked that Unitarians have one God at most. But I think that looking at the natural world as being imbued with divinity is a pretty great way to look at things. Think Mary Oliver's sense of wonder in the natural world, and yes, we will get to her. Psychology tells us about negative bias. which is the idea that we respond more strongly to negative occurrences than to positive ones. We'll do a little test here. How many of you drove to church today? Lots of you. Okay. Did anyone let you merge? Or wave at you to go at a four-way stop? Did anyone weave in and out at a high rate of speed or cut you off? Which one of those things are you apt to remember for longer? Probably the second one. Science tells us that most of our negative experiences get placed into long-term memories more quickly than our positive ones do. But there's an easy way to combat this, and that is simply by noticing the positive things and thinking about it for about 15 seconds. 15 seconds, that's all it takes. Just kind of go over it in your brain. Hey, that was nice. Look what that person did. Psychology also tells us that we need 10 positive interactions to every 1 negative interaction to feel like our relationships are thriving. Sometimes that's kind of hard. We sort of feel like we need to tell our partners or our kids what needs to happen. But apparently this works better if we tell them 10 times as often how great they are and how much we love them. Life is often challenging. The news is bad. Climate change is real. The former president now has something like 91 criminal charges against him and is still the Republican frontrunner. And life is hard for us as individuals as well. Our loved ones die or get sick. COVID is still a thing, as much as we like to wish it wasn't. We lose jobs or relationships or beloved pets. Noticing the good things doesn't mean that the bad things don't happen. And it doesn't mean that they don't hurt. But it does make some things easier. It's kind of the difference between happiness and joy. Happiness is a little more conditional. Sort of think of the opposite of happy as being sad. It is hard to be both happy and sad at the same time. Sometimes it happens, but But joy is different. Joy says, damn, some things are really hard, but I can claim joy even in the midst of the really hard things, even if it's just for a moment. But what we've learned is that we really need to figure out how to savor that joy, how to hold on to it for a little bit longer so it sticks around and doesn't fly off with the next bad driver. Interestingly, when one surveys people about their happiness, folks actually report that they are the happiest at about age 80. Right? Bless your heart, Joan. She just said it takes that long. And I think that that's a surprise to folks who are younger, because we kind of think of old age as a time when your body is not feeling quite as great anymore. Things are slowing down. But what apparently happens is that people who are older are better at embracing small joys, and this has been shown to make people happier. My mom, who died in October, wasn't terribly happy anymore. She had rheumatoid arthritis, and she used a walker, or my dad pushed her sitting on her walker to get around. She was uncomfortable most of the time, and she didn't sleep well. She had lost her vision due to macular degeneration and was really unhappy about that because it happened at a point where she couldn't adapt well. But in June of last year, my dad asked me to go with them to Diamond Lake because Dad wanted at least one more fishing trip, and my mom couldn't be alone in the RV for that long. And so the three of us, together with my dad's friends, John and Kathy, drove down to Diamond Lake. And my mom didn't ever get out of the RV. It was too hard for her to go up and down the stairs. So she pretty much moved between her chair and the bathroom and the bed at night. And it didn't seem to me that it could have been that much fun for her. But 2 of the nights that we were there, I made her a s'more. And I have to tell you that watching my mom eat a toasty marshmallow dripping out of the graham cracker with melty chocolate on it brought a big grin to both of our faces. She was savoring that s'more. And another afternoon, when we ran out of things to talk about, she asked me if I would sing to her. And I sang lots of soft pop hits of the 1970s, and she told me how much she loved to hear me sing. Now, let's be real, my singing is nothing to write home about. But for my mom, hearing her daughter sing some of her old favorite songs, Sunshine on My Shoulders, and Killing Me Softly with his song, and It's Not That Easy Being Green by Kermit the Frog, that made her happy. We don't need trips to far-off destinations, though that would probably be lovely too. We don't need lots of money or fancy stuff. We need connection. We need joy. We need beauty, and that stuff is found right here, right in front of us, in sunsets and sunrises and flowers. Eat 3 bites of something delicious. Go look at a flower. Talk to someone new and discover 2 things that you have in common. Pet your own cat or dog. If you do not have your own cat or dog and your neighborhood is anything like mine, you can go outside and within 15 minutes there will be a cat or dog walking past your house. Feed the birds. Water your garden. Watch kids playing, especially kids playing in the splash pad across the street. Say something nice to the person checking out your groceries, especially if you're in the self-checkout line. Pretty soon, we will be back to school, and for the parents among us, life will start getting busy again. Science tells us that our 40s and 50s are the time when we probably score the lowest on happiness surveys, probably because we're pretty overwhelmed. But this tail end of summer is a good time to practice savoring. And so one of the keys is to take that extra 10 or 15 seconds and savor the good things. Your kid says something nice. That bite of ice cream that I took out of the freezer with a spoon was delicious. That sunset is especially gorgeous today. Smog does that. It's odd. Take a moment just to savor it. Let it sink in and go into long-term memory. Think about doing gratitudes before you go to bed. Write them down or pray, or just say 5 things that you're grateful for. But I'm going to invite you to try and make them small, specific things. Because if every day you say, I'm grateful for my health and my kids and my job and my spouse, I'm sure you're grateful for all those things, but that's not really the point of this exercise. Try. I am grateful that my spouse looked really cute in that shirt today, and that they filled my gas tank yesterday. I am grateful for the flickers that came to the feeder. I am grateful that little Alex picked me a dandelion. I'm grateful that the moon is so beautiful. I am grateful that my foot isn't hurting anymore and I was able to walk all 3 miles without hurting. I'm grateful that the bank teller had time to chat. I'm grateful for the spider web that glowed in the dew. If we pay attention to the world around us, the sounds, the tastes, the smells, it doesn't mean bad things won't happen. It doesn't mean that everything will go our way. But it boosts our resilience because it gives us more joy in the tank. And it means that we're paying more attention to the good stuff. Sometimes horrific things happen, and they probably stay seared in there forever. But we don't have to let the annoyances take up more room in our brain than they deserve. Focus on the good. Let that be what you savor and take away. Mary Oliver writes, "Don't hesitate. If you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, don't hesitate. Give in to it. There are plenty of lives and whole towns destroyed or about to be. We are not wise and not very often kind, and much can never be redeemed. Still, life has some possibility left. Perhaps this is its way of fighting back, that sometimes something happens better than all the riches or power in the world. It could be anything, but very likely you will begin to notice it in that instant when love begins. Anyway, that's often the case. Anyway, whatever it is, don't be afraid of plenty. Joy is not meant to be a crumb. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.